going on, Jerome's? So we're weren't around when Kwesi had his press conference feeding the local media jackals yesterday because Daddy was out winning the day, having good times. But a couple things. First off, the hat. I need that hat. A Vikings helmet, dude just banging on a keyboard. It's good times. Also, Kwesi with the stash, leader of cola, littering and. It's a good look, man. Maybe it should be draft month mustache. Maybe we'll do that next year because I need about a 4-month head start to grow a mustache as it is, so that could sync up. My New Year's resolution, just grow a really dirty man mustache. That's what I do. Anyways, a couple takeaways from Kwesi's presser. So, of course, shouted out the scouting personnel, analytics staff, all that stuff. Plus, talked about the vision for the offseason. That includes free agency and the draft. And Kwesi, repeats ad nauseum about looking at things in a 2-year window as well as a future horizon and all that stuff. And as basically what the Vikings have done. And he specifically mentioned their shopping spree in free agency, Fries and Kelly, as well as trading for Jordan Mason, bringing back Aaron Jones, Allen. He also said, pronounced it Javon Hargrave. So maybe it's Javon, not Javon. I don't know. Also, he talked about re-signing Murph and Rodgers, talked extensively about Harrison Smith and what he means to the team at the end of his presser. So it seems like the Vikings are set up where they can go B, P, A. But, of course, as Kwesi said, it's a lot more nuanced than that. So impact focus, not need focus, proactive versus reactive. I don't know what that means. It's like a really good sounding word salad. So there you go. Also, you talked about how, quote, you have to earn the right to draft for impact, not need, end quote. And you do see teams at the top of the draft basically are grooved into one or a couple of specific positions, usually quarterback, right? And it really is the right and privilege that you have to earn to build a quality roster where you have depth all over the place, where you're in good cap shape as well, where the Vikings are getting there. We're already there, but the good teams consistently are able to draft impact players as opposed to drafting for need. Right? And you see, we always talk about the Ravens sitting at the back end of the draft, talk about the Eagles as well, just sitting back, getting an impact player, and you're just like, they did it again, right? And, the people will say, oh, you should tank for a higher draft pick. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to pan out and it's going to be good for you. I think that roster building is an art, and yes, ideally, a lot of your new blood comes in from the draft, but it's just a part of it. It's a major part, but just a part of building that roster. Does not like the term need versus want. Does not like the term need. It's more of a want. So we want to address this. We want to do this as opposed to need. Right? At 24, Kwesi talked about you need to have 24 players that you're ready to clap for. And it's true. I think that, frankly, being at the back end of the first round, it's a little bit more difficult than up at the top because, teams in the top 5, like there's a very short list of players that they're going to select various scenarios of who's available. But the whole thing is, if you're on the back end, like a lot of weird things can happen. So you need to have contingency plans for all of that. The Vikings return for the beginning of offseason workout program on Monday. So he's excited for that. Also talk about impact players as opposed to best player available. Impact can mean one great player or multiple great players, as talk about trading down or sticking and picking. And he talked about how trade charts, difficult exercise. Kwesi got a little smirk going on when we talk about trade charts because basically you could find any trade chart that supports your argument, whether team A wins a trade, team B wins a trade, whether it's Jimmy Johnson, whether it's Draft Deck, whether it's Fitzgerald, Spielberger, whether it's whatever. Like, there's lots of draft charts out there. They're not all the same, and they're not all perfect, right? But you talked about it's a difficult exercise. Talk about he built his own. And a couple things that a lot of the charts don't factor in is scarcity of the position, both in the draft as well as what are your options in free agency. Like, if we don't get position X in the draft, is there an option later in the draft, or can we get one in free agency and or trade? You mentioned trade a couple times, so eyes up there. Plus, you talked about how quality and quantity versus what are your other options, and that's what it comes down to in the draft. Plus, you talked about how you look at things in 2-year windows. like a rolling 2-year window. And last draft, the Vikings moved up 3 times. And you talked about specifically moving up to 23 with the Texans, and where the Vikings had that flexibility because they had number 11 and 23. If the Vikings wanted to trade up into the stratosphere, they had the draft capital to do that because current draft picks is way more valuable than future draft picks in the eyes of teams that potentially could trade down. So, and also you talked about how often are you going to be drafting that high, right? So you talked about the opportunity there. It's true. Also, he said, notes that sometimes it takes time, and he specifically highlighted pass rusher and quarterback play, so that's a clear allusion to Diamond Dallas Turner and J.J. McCarthy, respectively. So I think that if both those guys pan out, when both those guys pan out, I mean, the 2024 draft is going to look like an absolute smashing success. Plus, I feel like since a lot of the draft capital was involved in trading up to 23 and then up to 10 and then up to 17, I think that you should look at last year's draft and this year's draft together as one whole, since a lot of those picks were involved this year. Also, tight end. He said obviously the Vikings will add a tight end since the Vikings currently only have 2 tight ends on the rooster. Plus, he used the term champagne problems, which I don't know. I still think the Kwesi watches the channel, man, because we specifically talked about that as champagne problems as well. But he talked about with Hawkins and Oliver, it isn't really like a need, but they're surely going to shore things up. And the Vikings have done work on tight ends. Urasek from Georgia, Bryson Nesbitt from North Carolina were top 30 visits. Thomas Fedon II from Nebraska. They attended his was it pro day or workout? It's one of the two. But yeah, they've done work on tight ends that look to be in that day 3 strata. Also, backup quarterback hasn't only been about the comp picks, but they are aware about the formula. And he talked about how it is an opportunity cost, where last year when the Vikings signed Jonathan Grenard, it cost them a compensatory pick. But, of course, you're going to take Jonathan Grenard, 27-year-old pass rusher who fits your scheme perfectly. You're going to get after things, right? But talked about focusing on best opportunities, and we'll address it. So, basically, yada, 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 yada. My prediction is they have Tannehill in their back pocket. They could potentially draft a quarterback if the right one is there. Thinking like Will Howard or Kyle McCord in the the mid-round, top of day 3 type area. If none of those come to fruition, I think that they trade that. I think they do a pick swap trade for Aiden O'Connell of the Raiders. I think that's the tier. I think their first option is to draft a quarterback. I think their second option is to trade for Aiden O'Connell. I think the third option is Tannehill or other veteran quarterback TBD. I think that's where things stack up, and it does track with Kwesi's process where everything is about options and flexibility. So it isn't like we're all in on Will Howard. If we don't get him, we're just going to cancel the team. Yeah, it ain't that. Options all over the place. So that's it. Vikings general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah feeding the local media jackals yesterday. What are your thoughts, our thoughts, his thoughts, everyone's thoughts? Comment section. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol. Production value.